This is after a really heavy-duty pressure cleaning. Still have a lot of oyster bases and barnacle bases left on here. Some of the epoxy barrier coat has come off, and that's allowing the exposed aluminum to corrode. And so it's really, that's not good, because that could eat a hole right through the hull. You know, all these spots right here, those are exposed spots that are getting galvanic corrosion from electricity in the water. And normally you'd have this gray epoxy coating on there, but it's come off in some spots. Maybe it just wasn't applied correctly, but it was quite a job pressure cleaning inside here. But you can see how those oyster bases and all the epoxy paint has come off. And that, again, that epoxy paint protects the aluminum from stray voltage and corrosion in salt water. It'll actually eat right through the aluminum, which it started to do. So, there's just a lot of surface area on here too, because it's almost like doing 2 or 3 boats. So, we got, this is the other sponson, between the other sponsons here, same thing. All this should probably all be ground down, and the only way to do it is to take a sander and just sand and get all this corrosion. You got to get the corrosion off of here, off the aluminum, and then put a new epoxy coat on. 3 coats of epoxy coat, and then this is this side over here. Same thing. A lot of pretty bad looking spots here. When you get up close to it and you look at it, you can really see all that corrosion, all these corrosion spots occurring. Now here, you can see a separation between this bottom rib and the hull. But that's just, I don't think that's too much of an issue. It's not like it lets water in or anything like that. It's mostly a protective rib for when you beach it or you hit something underwater. Now let's go to the stern of the boat here, and see, the engine was painted with epoxy too. We're going to need to get some new zinc anodes on here, but that's all going to have to be chiseled away, get that stuff off of there. Transducer was broken when we hauled it out. I don't know if you want a new transducer or not. We'll need to know that. But looking from the aft end forward, you can see all the pitting and how the epoxy coating has come off in some areas. Some areas it's thicker than others and is adhered better than others. Now, up in here is the engine well with all the cables and stuff. And it's a mess in there. We really got in there with the pressure cleaner. Had to get the hoses up. I mean, this was caked with stuff. We got buckets and buckets of oysters and barnacle crud out of here. But again, you could see some of the exposed aluminum there, which is going to have to be coated. So we got to coat inside this real tight compartment right in front of the motor as well. And try to grind out some more of those bases and get a new epoxy coat in there. But I'm concerned about things like these cables and these hoses. They've got oysters growing on the hydraulic steering hoses. You can't pressure clean these. I don't really think they warrant replacing though. And then you got the electrical cables going down through there too. All that stuff should have been fastened up and not laying down in the water. Let's see if there's a neater way to do that, where we don't have all of these cables coming out of the front of the motor and then going down into this well here, because that's kind of messing those cables up. That's really bad. I haven't noticed any functioning problem with the engine at this point, or the steering, so I don't think anything's been compromised as far as electrically yet, but we'll have to take a closer look at that after we really get in there. And here's the back, and then here's the starboard, between the starboard and center sponson. Again, you can see all these oyster bases have to be ground off with a really coarse sandpaper, and then all this just completely ground off, and then a new epoxy going. I'm not so concerned about leaving these things on here. The problem is the exposed aluminum areas that are getting the corrosion. Like right here, just this little spot right here. That's going to eat through the aluminum. You can see how it's eating through the aluminum already right here. It's corrosion right there. And that's going to ruin the boat. So that's one of the most important things, is to try to get a coating in there. This is inside the well in front of the motor. Got to get all that cleaned up more. It's just really hard to get in there with the pressure cleaner. So otherwise it happens. I've noticed some water dripping from the drain plug here a little bit. I'm not sure if there's water in that sponson or not. I got to try to get those drain plugs out. It's been epoxied in, so I might have to use a little heat to get that drain plug out. Make sure there's not water actually sitting in the boat. Otherwise, she's very nice. It's been covered, but the cover protects the boat against the sun, but then it retains moisture, and the cushions have some little spots of mold on them. And I gotta see if I can get some mold remover and try a couple spots and see if it'll come off. A lot of times it just gets deep in the fabric and the mold doesn't come off the seats and stuff. Over here is where Bambi had mentioned you have a slight dent right there. And then you do have some dents in the hull too, from where it had been picked up at another time. A couple of them under there where the stands, where the old stands were. We always put the stands where the seams are, because that's the strongest part. But somebody had blocked it up midships and put little dents, like the dent back here where the weight is. This is kind of dented right here. You can see that. Same thing on the other side, and there's a spot like that up toward the front as well. But I don't see any cracks or any real damage. I don't think it's going to really affect the performance of the boat. Just want to make note of it.